Welcome to Building Great Sales Teams, a show dedicated to making sales teams tick, tick, boom. Great sales teams are not recruited, they are built, block by block. Let's get to work.
My solar business still needs me. My AT&T business runs on its own, but the solar business is only 8 months old. So it's like I'm developing a lot of that, and I'm turning away clients, unfortunately, just because the tickets are too small, to pull me away from solar. But all right, well, let's get into it. I'm sure you got a jam-packed schedule. All right, guys, we got Donnie Boivin. Is that the right way to pronounce it?
Boivin.
Yeah, I saw it on Facebook, and then I still said it wrong. All right, do that again. All right, guys, we got Donnie Boivin, CEO and founder of Success Champions. He's one of the leading minds on sales business development and business growth. He's got a few events that he runs as well, the Badass Business Summit and Champions Table Masterminds. And then, of course, you've got the Growth Mode podcast with Kevin Snow as well. And one of my favorite things about that is you're holding I think is a glass of bourbon.
No, it's a glass of rum, but close.
Oh, a glass of rum. I saw the ice ball and I figured it was bourbon. But no, that's great. Donnie, thank you so much for coming on the show. We got hooked up and I knew you're perfect for our audience. You look at all your credentials and you expect to see you in a suit and tie and everything. And of course, that's not what you get, which I'm the same way. Right. And so I knew you had to be on the show. Donnie, thank you for coming on.
Oh, my honor, brother. And thanks for the recognition of not being your traditional sleazy freaking sales trainer that's out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, looking forward to it. So
tell us a little bit about your background. I saw on your profile that you've got a farm. Is that correct?
I do.
So I've got a ton of questions
Okay.
because I just bought 3 acres about a year ago. We put a house on it. We put the fence. We've got about half acres is our yard. We just started raising chickens. We got 3 chickens. So we're starting small. You know what I'm saying? You have any advice
by this time next year, you'll have 50.
Really?
Yeah. Chicken math is what they call it. It's a real thing.
Okay.
Once
so what happens there?
As soon as you start getting into one chicken, you're gonna be like, oh my God, look at all these different breeds and all this other stuff. You're gonna get eggs, and then you're gonna start building special houses and fucking the food, and then you're gonna go up to the feed store and they're gonna have chicks. Are you married?
Yes.
Oh yeah. As soon as your wife sees more baby chicks, she's gonna come home and just randomly with boxes of fucking chicks in them. And next thing you know, you've got to build a bigger fucking chicken coop because you don't have enough space for the chickens. And then if you let them free range and they're all over your farm and shit, you'll just keep buying and buying and buying and buying. I have no clue how many freaking chickens we have at this point. But now also have turkeys, ducks, geese, freaking guinea hens,
everything with wings, it sounds like.
Yeah, damn near. And right now they're all popping out baby chicks. So if you go across my farm, there's baby turkeys, ducks, geese, everything just running everywhere. It looks like Easter Sunday at a freaking church where they break out all the petting zoo stuff. That's what's running my farm right now.
That's awesome. Do you have kids, grandkids?
No kids. I've got the closest thing we got to that is we got goats. So we have dwarf Nigerian goats.
Okay.
And everything you see in those videos is real. They bounce around like freaking popcorn.
Oh, that's awesome.
We've got also other crazy critters. We got sugar gliders. We've got bearded dragons. We've got hedgehogs. So we've got a full-on menagerie of animals on the farm.
You really could charge for a petting zoo.
Damn near.
So we had a little scare last night. We had a thunderstorm at our house, and it actually flipped over the chicken coop I had. It was one of those pre-built ones from Tractor Supply. And I was just telling Alicia, my wife, a week before that, hey, we need to anchor this thing down. And of course, the storm comes through the next time, and the chickens are all freaked out and everything. Anyways, we can go down the rabbit hole on that.
Literally.
So tell me a little bit about your business. So you've got Success Champions, but then you also have the events.
Yeah, well, so we've got 3 companies underneath Success Champions. So
Mhm.
we've have Success Champion Networking, where we literally changed how the world networks, and we fixed what everybody hated about networking. So your traditional networking is a bunch of people go to a meeting, spend 35, 45 minutes doing these stupid ass 60-second commercials with dumbass jingles on the end. And some idiot gets up and does a 10-minute presentation that nobody gives a shit about. And then they fabricate a whole bunch of referrals. We fixed all that shit. So we launched that in March of 20. 55 chapters across the US. We just opened 3 chapters in Canada. We're getting ready to open up in Belfast, Ireland, London, Spain, and potentially India. So we're going global very fast because people just are hungry for a new way to network. And I never wanted to open networking organizations, and we should talk about that. But then we have Champions Table Masterminds, where we teach people how to grow and scale a business. You got to be more than 2 years in business, because you got to get to the point where you finally have fucked up enough things. You realize it's got to be a better way of doing it. And you got to actually know what you sell. And we legitimately just bring people together to create a peer group of people going through it so we can scale them faster. And then we have the Badass Business Summit, which is an event that happens in Texas, September of every year. We rent out an entire hotel, bring speakers in from all over the US. Next year, we'll be bringing speakers in from all over the world. Do 3 days of business growth and business development conversations, 23 top speakers this year. And then in addition to that, we have the Growth Mode podcast. We also have another podcast called Success Champions. We haven't produced content for a while, but it still gets 20,000 downloads a day. And continues to crush. Growth Mode's a top 100 in 9 countries. We get a ridiculous amount of downloads on that as well too. So
dude, that's fantastic. So you've obviously had explosive growth with all 3 companies. What would you attribute the at least the networking company? 55 plus chapters, that's huge. How long has that taken to build out?
So we launched that in March of 20, and the way it happened is so damn funny. So prior to launching,
right before COVID.
Yeah. And that's why we launched, man. So I'd rented out the Hearst Convention Center up here in Fort Worth, and I saw your Texas flag, so I know you're in Texas somewhere.
Yeah.
But I'm up here in Fort Worth, and so I'd rent out the Hearst Convention Center. I had 17 speakers flying in from around the world. We'd sold out the venue, and I was sitting in the president of the convention center's office when the mayor of Hearst called and said, if anybody shows up for my event, they'll arrest everybody on site. COVID.
Okay, gotcha.
Right. So it was right at the time when the shutdown happened. And so on that drive home, I reached out to my team and said, okay, we're going to be fine. All of our business is online. We have no worries there. But all these companies are fixing to move online. We need to come up with a way to help them be able to stay in business. Took us 2.5 years to get comfortable online. They don't have 2.5 years, man. They got 30 days to figure this shit out.
Right.
So like you do when you run a business, 3:30 in the morning, I bolted the fuck out of bed and went, shit, I got an idea. Fired a message off the team, told them what we were going to do. And then that morning I was talking to my wife and I said, babe, we're going to open up networking groups and I don't want to fucking do it. So prior to launching my companies, I was with an organization called Sandler Training, which I'm sure you've heard of. And, I was supposedly one of the top sales trainers in the country with them. I don't know what the fuck that means, other than I'm good at flapping my gums in front of a room.
Right.
But during that time, building out that business, I didn't like all the BNIs, the chambers and all that. Nothing against them. It just, they couldn't get me to the level of clientele I needed to get to.
No, I know exactly what you mean. I've been part of those things, and
for sure,
compared to the masterminds that I'm in now, it's not even.
Yeah, it's insane. So even back then, I'd launched all my own networking groups to make sure that I was getting around the right people. But when I launched my company, I'm like, dude, none of my companies can be associated with networking or networking groups, because anybody who teaches networking is just a broke motherfucker that can't sell. And I don't want to be associated in that arena. So I was telling my wife this, and she knew it. And she looked at me and she goes, you realize you're a fucking idiot for not wanting to watch these groups. I'm like, how am I a fucking idiot for not wanting to watch these groups? She goes, why don't you become the guy that changes how the world networks and fix what everybody hates about networking? And I went, shit. And then 7 days later, we launched our first chapter.
That's beautiful. And so many origin stories I hear happen like that. It's you have the idea and you don't want to do the idea. And then your wife smacks you on the back of the head and says, hey, this is what you're doing.
Yeah. I keep telling everybody I'm going to write the book, the shit my wife said that changed my life, you know, there's too many moments in time when she said the right thing. And I'm like, damn it. Yeah.
No, that's awesome though. So that was so with the networking groups, you launched them for COVID. So I imagine there was some type of online situation there.
Yeah. And that's where I think really helped us out is we built the groups to be online. So, you know, with the farm, dude, I'm 45 minutes from downtown Fort Worth. If I got to go meet somebody in downtown, I'm losing 3-4 hours a day. I'm not commuting. Right. Yeah. So I'd already built my businesses where I didn't have to go anywhere. I could sit right here and do everything. So when I launched the groups, I mean, COVID just helped us out because everybody was looking for something online and we just happened to have an online answer. And so we built the meeting so that people actually wanted to get value out of them. And in addition to that, they wanted to participate and wanted to help us grow. And it just worked tremendously. And so we just added in a lot of features that people weren't thinking about as far as what could be done with networking. And that's what really drove a lot of our growth, is how much we pour into the members of all of our chapters.
Awesome. And if you want to find out what those features are, you got to go to
Success Champion Networking.
Champions, yeah.
SuccessChampionNetworking.com. Go check it out.
I was gonna ask you. I'm like, wait, he probably wants people to go check it out to figure that part out. So that's awesome.
That's fine. I mean, I don't mind sharing it too. I mean, so I'm just so not the old school of sales where I hoard information, man. I freely share everything that I've fucked up in business.
Well, that's the way you have to be now. I mean, everybody's putting so much information online, and you know, like my whole system is Kodak, you know, and I break it all down online. I tell you exactly what to do. And then what happens? People will start trying to do it, or they get bored or whatever the case is. And they end up messaging me anyways. Hey, can you help me out with this?
Yep.
So it's like, that's kind of the model now in terms of being an influence on social media.
For sure. And I tell everybody, man, you might as well teach it, because the DIYers, like the people who really want to do it themselves, you don't want them as clients anyways, because they're going to be a pain in your ass.
Yeah.
Now, because they're looking for obviously cheap, because they don't think their time's worth anything, because they're going to go build it themselves. Right. You know, and so by teaching, you automatically filter out all the people you don't want to work with. Because the people that are ready to run and gun and actually do the things you're talking about and implement the things, when you're teaching them, man, they see it. They understand the time, the energy, the effort you've put into it. And they're like, that's my guy, right? That's who I want to work with. And there's nothing you and I can teach. They can't go to Google or YouTube right now and fucking just go, how do I do X?
Right.
And there's going to be 10 billion freaking, topics and videos on it. So give it all away, and even if somebody was so smart to consume every piece of information you put out there, they're not going to be able to implement it to the level you pulled it off. So, yeah,
that's what happens all the time with clients too, is I'll be going through a back and forth with them or a one-on-one, and I'll realize, oh man, there's like 20 nuances in here that I can't really put into words or can't explain online, and that's where the experience comes in,
For sure.
And that, you see the memes all the time. That's what they're paying you for. They're paying you for the 10 years of experience, not for the one action you take. It's all the 100 nuances in that action that you took it,
For sure.
Good deal. So the Growth Mode podcast, you guys had a lot of the people that listen to my show have their own podcasts as well. And they're business owners with sales teams or want to grow sales teams. And then they have the podcast to get their name out there and their brand out there and everything. You said 20,000 downloads a day. That is
at its prime, we hit over 50,000 downloads a day.
What would you contribute that success to?
One, we launched it in 2018. That helped. Two, go ahead.
The marketplace wasn't crowded.
It wasn't as saturated. So the second thing that contributed to it is I was doing a lot of speaking. So all over the US. And when I spoke, I would figure out which hotels were nearby or that I would assume would have the most, sales guys or your road warriors at.
Right.
And I'd go hit 2 or 3 bars that night after speaking. And I'd find the 1 or 2 guys sitting by themselves at the bar. I'd go sit next to them. You'd eventually strike up a conversation. And then I'd always ask, do you listen to podcasts? And they're like, oh yeah, we listen to podcasts. And I'm like, oh, cool. What podcast do you listen to? Every time it was Joe Rogan. Right.
Yeah. Joe Rogan. Yeah.
And I'm like, where do you guys listen to Joe at? And they're like, oh, Apple or Spotify or whatever. I'm like, well, break out your phone really quick. And they break out their phone. And I'm like, just type in Success Champions. And there was me and my mug. And they're like, wait, that's you? I'm like, yeah, check it out. Let me know what episode you listened to. Here's my email address. Tell me what you thought of the episode.
Yeah.
And then I'd go to the next bar, find a couple of people and do that with. And I did that for freaking months of going everywhere and getting people subscribed to my show.
That is some insane guerrilla marketing.
But
I'm sure that person became a huge fan and an advocate for your show and got like 20 other people on it because they met you in person.
They had the origin story.
Yeah.
They're like, dude, I was sitting at the bar. I just met this guy, and man, he was so cool. We had a couple of drinks together. You got to check out his show. And it helped that we were hearing people's origin story, man. So we were interviewing some cool people. Now, I've had the pleasure of interviewing, like Neil Patel, Shailene Johnson, John Gordon, and just some big household name people on there. But people wanted to hear the shit that they went through to find success. So we were telling a lot of really cool stories and insights into their journeys and things. And the only reason we still don't produce content on it is it didn't feed the fucking business. I was really good at making everybody else look like absolute rock stars and telling their story, but it wasn't feeding my business.
Right.
And so I would tell everybody who's doing a podcast to grow your business, fuck the downloads. Don't give a shit if anybody listens to your show. Go interview your prospects.
Absolutely.
Because it gives you an hour-long conversation to talk with people and get to know them. You can't beat bonding and rapport. You can't beat connection like you can by interviewing somebody about their story.
And it's very true. I haven't really, somebody asked me that the other day. It's like, when are you going to get Joe Rogan or when are you going to get Tony Robbins on your podcast?
Don't matter.
And I'm like, well, I honestly haven't really thought about that. Like, one, because I'm in my business mastermind, I have 100 people to get on the show.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And I'm going to get not necessarily more business, but more opportunity out of those interviews than I will if I go and get a big name,
Here's another cool perspective for you. If you got Joe Rogan, everybody knows Joe's story, right? We saw it, right? We grew up with it type thing, right? There's nobody going to come listen to Joe on your podcast and fucking stay. They're going to come that one episode, and I can show you in the back of the mind, it's going to spike. And then your next one's going to go right down to wherever your download's in. Bringing on the stories from people that nobody's heard of, that's where the badassery comes from. Because a lot of times you'll be their first podcast. And when that comes out, they're going to share it with their friends, their family. Like, dude, check this out. I just got interviewed on a podcast. And that's what helped us early on. The first 100 episodes of Success Champions, nobody knew the people that were on there. And it wasn't until we really started popping that the big names started reaching out to come be on the show. But at the end of the day, build a business and just let the podcast be the tool that gets you into the right conversations.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that about them sharing and everything, because the most downloads I've had in one episode was Patrick Bolanos. And so he builds custom food truck, and he built my podcast trailer that I just finished.
Oh,
and he does anything on a trailer. He'll do his business will do. They do 20 million a year. They're killing it. Right.
That's awesome.
But what he does is he tells the story of each trailer. You know what I'm saying? So he has this amazing engagement. You know what I mean? And so like, that's my highest downloads. Yet I've interviewed other people with, 20,000 a month download type podcasts. And they weren't my highest show. Is the one with, Patrick and all he's got a really good following. So I think that's why I had success with that one. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's like I went like 2 months not looking at the downloads, You know what I mean? And
Yep.
I enjoyed it so much more.
For sure, because
it was genuine, you know?
Well, and in this day and age, I mean, there's over 2 million podcasts in the marketplace, right? And you know, what people don't understand is nobody wants to hear your Zoom conversation, right? They're coming to learn. And the top part podcasts in the marketplace are teaching a skill set of some sort. I mean, if you look at all the big players, excluding Joe, you know, Joe's got the luxury. He's been doing this shit for 12 or 13 years. So he was very smart, and Dwayne The Rock Johnson style built his podcast, because everywhere Joe Rogan went, he fucking told people he had a podcast. It's like Dwayne Johnson, you know, if that dude's going on a late show, he's on Instagram live going, you motherfuckers better tune into the late show, because I'm fixing to go on there. I'm going to tear things up. Right. And the biggest names that are getting their names out there are the biggest self promoters.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. And I love, I've been watching The Rock since he was wrestling. And I love the fact that he is not a movie star. He's not a wrestling star. He is a marketing genius. You know what I mean? That's all he does so well. And Kevin Hart kind of followed in his footsteps. I feel like he just markets the shit out of everything that they're doing. And they get paid hundreds of millions of dollars just to stand in front of a product. It's like,
and that's it. I mean, you got to be your own PR machine. And in this day and age, the currency is your face, right? And if you're the face of your business, then, because we talked about a little bit, we've moved beyond how important a brand is. I mean, people still buy brand name shit, but what you're seeing more and more is people are buying the person and then getting what they sell. And so when you become the face of your company, more people get attached and related to you. They want to dig in deeper and find out more about your world. And that's what makes this time fun.
You're 100% dialed in on that. You'll see on my social media, it's, you know, a podcast release, it's my kids and, you know, the play that they're doing right now. And then it's, you know, me posting a long form post about the business and struggle that I went through and how I overcame it, you know?
Yep. And I'll tell you, if you're not on LinkedIn right now, doing the long form story style post, my growth on LinkedIn since February of this year has been absolutely insane. I don't give a shit what you sell. If you can tell that long story style, you know, kind of hero's journey of this is what happened, this is what I learned, here's what you should take away from it type post. I went and since February, I've added almost 2,000 followers. We've opened the 3 chapters in Canada, 22 chapters in the US, all because of this long form style of LinkedIn posting. It's been seriously rad about how hard and how fast this stuff has grown just by putting out one piece of content every day.
I've had a few people tell me I need to get on LinkedIn.
Oh,
and I'm on there. I'm just not posting. And it's like, it would take nothing for me to message my team right now. Hey, all my long form stuff, put it on LinkedIn. You know what I mean? So I thank you for that conviction. I need to do that right now.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Well, one of the things that I noticed that you had, I want to say on your blog is, let's see, you don't have a sales problem. You have a business development problem. So I was very curious about that. I didn't have time to get into it and read it and everything, but I would love for you to explain what you mean by that.
Sales is a final conversation. That's where you get to the yes, no conversation, right? Everything else is business development. The prospecting, the marketing, the social media, that's all business development stuff. 90% of people will tell you that they can get the deal done if they can just get into the conversation. You put me in front of the right person, I'll take care of that. So it's never the sales problem. People can usually figure out the sales conversation. If they have enough conversations, they're going to find some wins. And you know, once people learn that the more human they are during a sales conversation, the more deals they're going to win overall, because people buy from freaking people. So on the other side of that, people don't know how to prospect. They don't know how to business development. They don't know how to get people to come to them. and work on getting into enough of these conversations. So if you look at most sales training in the world, and I'm not a sales trainer anymore, but if you look at most sales training in the world, they primarily focus on the sales conversation, not how to get into the fucking sales conversation. And if people spent more time figuring out how to get into the sales conversation, they're going to do so much more business, because the best paid salespeople in the world prospect like a motherfucker. They turn off all the noise. They don't give a shit what people think about them, and they just call and go after anybody. Yep. And when you have that ability to call on anybody and have the right conversations, and can get into enough conversations, you'll crush it in sales, because there's sales is really simple, right? You go have real conversation with people. If what you sell makes sense for that customer, they're gonna say yes. But we grew up in this generation of, you've got to overcome objections, and you've got to manipulate, coerce, and do all this stupid shit to get sales done. And I promise, go learn business development. You'll get into enough sales conversations, and you'll win. So
I love what you're saying there, because now that I understand what you mean by that, I align with it a lot.
Yeah.
And so my favorite thing to talk about is, if you can walk and chew gum, I can teach you how to sell.
Right.
And am I really teaching you how to sell? No, I'm teaching you how to run your micro business, right? Which is, in a huge part of that is exactly what you said. It's the prospecting. It's having conversations with qualified customers, and then not wasting time on ones that aren't, or one-leggers and stuff like that. So, basically we built out a door-to-door division that, 13 offices, over 100 salespeople. And we did that because of the front end of it, not the back end of it.
For sure.
I've never been a salesperson. I've never been an amazing closer or anything like that, or what is considered an amazing closer. I've always been able to develop the program, and then put 10 people in it and shoot 5 out on the other side. And if they follow the program, they're going to be successful. And they can be, in terms of talent, they can have none, or they can have all of it, and the program's going to work for them. It caters to all the levels of talent, but it's about, like you said, it's about the actions you take on the front end, which is the prospecting, the amount of hours that you work, the things that you can control that end up in a certain amount of conversations in your conversion rate. Yes, you got to work on that, and it's got to get better and everything, but it's more about the actions you take on the front end. And that's how we manage internally.
No, it's awesome.
Based on the actions instead of the results.
Yeah. And if people get this concept of closing out of their fucking head, life's going to be real simple. There's no closing anymore. There's no tactic or maneuver to get the deal done. Right. You need to get closure on every conversation. It's really, really simple. Every conversation, if you leave with a yes, a no, or a significant next step, and you don't give a shit about the outcome of either 3 of those, then sales gets a hell of a lot easier. But people are so hung up that I've got to win this deal, right? I've got to get this one right, that they force, they push, they become a jackass salesperson. And that goes back to what we're talking about. If you get good at the business development game, this conversation doesn't matter, right? You don't have to win this deal, because there's 10 more coming behind it. And that's where the magic comes in. So the way we always explain business development is you need to have 3 activities going at all times. You need to have something that gets you into warm conversation. A warm conversation is networking, sitting on boards, going to trade shows, going to conferences, anything that puts you face to face or Zoom to Zoom with an individual. You need to have a cold outreach going. So that's cold calls, cold emails, cold DMs, door to door, something that takes you straight cold into somebody's world. And then you need to have a passive strategy going, which is your social media, your direct mail, your email, ongoing marketing drip campaigns, and all that stuff that allows people to see your content and raise their hand and go, you know what, I'm interested in what you have. And if you take one cold, one warm, and one passive activity, and you're like, these are the 3 fucking things I'm going to do, and you become the best at those 3 fucking things, your pipeline is going to explode, because you're focused on the right things, and it's the right mix of activities that'll allow you to get into a lot of the right conversations. And it's a complete mental shift to quit worrying about the end of the sale and get good at getting into the sale.
That's huge, because you can be an average salesperson and you can beat a talented closer every single time.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And you know, I've always kind of not despised, but I don't like the, you know, going after and recruiting the best closers, because it just says my business is weak. You know what I mean? And I need to recruit these amazing salespeople, or whatever the case is. No, but that's golden information. I hope everybody wrote that down. If you're not driving, those, what was it? Cold, warm,
and passive.
And passive. 100%.
Yeah. The other philosophy that really helped me more when I launched my companies was quit trying to qualify everybody you sit across from. You know, I don't know how old you are. I'm 45, but you know, 35. Cool. So a little bit behind me, but my generation, we grew up with the Glenn Gary, Glenn Ross, the always be closing shit, right?
Yeah.
And it was hammered into us, you know, that you got to qualify and qualify and qualify. Well, it's so fun to think about it from a different perspective. I don't qualify anybody, but I do try and disqualify everybody. And it's a really cool concept that's helped me enough that if you go into every conversation knowing exactly what somebody needs to be able to have to say yes to you, right? That they, you know, they obviously have to have money. They got to have the time, the energy. They got to be able to make a decision, right? You've got to actually want to work with them, you know, and you know all these factors that you need for them to say yes. You can sit across from someone and go into and try and disqualify them from your product or service. And if they're a legit good fit, they're going to fight to qualify themselves, right? 100%. If they're not, it's really easy. You don't even have to make them an offer, right? Because if you're through your conversation, you realize they got no money, there's no point of pitching your product to them.
Yeah.
Right. If you know they got no ability to make a decision, there's no point of pitching your product to them. Right. So you go through the process with the mindset of, how do I find out if I really want to work with these people? So I tell them, do the cocktail test. Would you want to go have a cocktail with this person after this call's done? And you'll be amazed if you go in with that kind of mindset of how many more lifelong relationships you'll build with your clients, because you're not trying to qualify. You're not trying to push them. You're going to have some real genuine conversations.
So one of the things you talk about is fewer clients, bigger deals.
Yep.
And, you know, I love that concept, but I also love what you just said. When you create those long-term, lifelong relationships, what is going to happen inevitably? Again, they're going to become your ambassador. They're going to become your cheerleader, and they're going to send you a bunch of business, because it's about the relationship and not just the transaction. Right.
Yep.
And so that's incredibly huge. And for anybody that's building a sales team, if you can write curriculum behind that and institute training behind that on the front end, your salespeople are going to see so much more results on the back end. So that's huge.
And I agree with it. And I think if you're a sales manager, you're a business owner, and you got a team, the best way to train anybody is the you go, I go method. And the you go, I go is, all right, cool. Let's learn how to cold call this stuff. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a couple of cold calls first, show you my process and system, and then you're going to do a couple of cold calls. But here's the rule. If I fuck it up and completely blow it, I want you to bust my chops and laugh at me, right? I want you to make fun of me because of how bad I just did. Because even this day, you and I could pick up the phone to cold call and we're going to blow some, right? Because we just fucking say stupid shit or whatever else, right?
Yeah, our brain glitches.
Absolutely, right? But if you have somebody sitting next to you that can bust your chops and laugh with you, right? It makes the process, fun, funner. It's not about beating the person down. It's about enjoying the process, because you're like, look, fucker, you're fixing to dial now, your turn now, don't fuck it up. And then when you do the things right, you can high five and have a good time. And this isn't the bro marketing machismo shit. This is about learning to enjoy the process by sitting with your team and showing them, hey, I'm not asking you to do shit that I won't do, which is what most sales managers do. I can't sell, so let me now teach you how to sell. And you want to scare most sales manager? Say, hey, do me a favor, pick up that phone and make a cold call for me. They'll shit themselves. right? Because they sucked at it and, you know, worked their way into a sales management job. They're like, oh, my job's to be a manager, not to sell.
Right.
One quick funny story. So I was in Dallas, large call center. I'm with Sandler, and they brought me in. They had the whole pit, right? So 100 people
Boiler room.
calling, boiler room style, right? And they brought me in, and they'd asked me if I'd come in and teach them how to cold call. And so as I started talking, you know, I think I was doing like a 4-hour workshop with them. At the 2-hour mark, we take a break. The sales manager pulled me aside, goes, man, a lot of the things you're taking is not what we teach them. That's not our style. And I said, well, you know, let's teach them how to win. And he goes, this is going to work, right? I'm like, yeah, it's going to work. And I'll prove it when we go back in session. And he goes, all right, cool. We go back in session. I said, guys, watch this. And I asked the vice president of sales, I'm like, hey, would you come up and do a call and show them this style and everything we learned? He goes, oh, no, I don't do that. I'm like, what do you mean you don't do that? And he's like, yeah, I don't call. I motivate and fire them up. I'm like, and teach them how to freaking call. I'm like, well, show me that. Show me how you fire them up and motivate them to call, because I'm really curious. And he goes, all right, everybody get on the fucking phones. Let's go, start dialing. And he starts screaming and yelling people. And I'm like, I let it go for a little while. Like, everybody come back. And I'm like, yeah, that shit don't work. Grab the phone and dial. And he looks at me and goes, guys, I'm sorry, this session is done. And then he literally, session was over. I grabbed my check. They weren't hiring me anymore. And he called me later. He goes, I can't believe you embarrassed me that much in front of my team. I said, man, any leader that is not willing to jump in the fucking pit with them isn't a fucking leader. I said, you are leading these guys to their fucking death because you can't actually train, inspire, and motivate them to do the things they need to do. He hung up the phone on me. But it's unfortunately, it's what a lot of people grew up on, is this shitty style of selling that just doesn't work in this day and age. You got to go be human.
It's like junk food. It works for a little bit, you know what I mean? And you get hype on it, you know, Wolf of Wall Street, Boiler Room, Glenn Gary, Glenn Ross. You get excited about it for 2 seconds. And trust me, early in my company, we played those videos.
Right.
You know what I mean? And we got all hype on them and everything, you know, that sales bro culture, you know. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's temporary, you know. And one of the things that I love is I have, you know, I'm a curriculum writer, right? You know what I mean? That's what I'm really good at, and building out the business and everything. And early on, I was very blessed to get a VP of sales that was just a talented salesperson, you know. And it wasn't even that he was a talented salesperson. I hate that term. He was just a really cool people, or a really good people person.
Yeah.
He was also a counselor. You know, that was his selling style. You know what I'm saying? And he was counselor of salespeople too. And you know, just to illustrate your point, you know, we just started our solar division 8 months ago, and he wasn't in the field for the first part of it because I was developing it early on. You know, and so I was making some of the early sales, right? And then I had him take over so I could start building out the consulting division. And he did really well for a while. And then all of a sudden we went, you know, I think it was like 1 month, we only had 2 closes the whole month. And so we had this conversation, well, what can we do? And he was like, well, we do what we always do. We go to the field, you know? And so he went back into the field with his guys. And then the next week, 7 closes in 1 week.
Yep. That's it.
You know,
That's it.
so I'm incredibly blessed that I have someone that can go and execute, and I don't get taken out of the executive piece of the business in order to do it myself, you know?
Yeah, that's huge.
Which if I had to, I would, you know, 100%. I wouldn't be comfortable. You know what I mean?
Right. No, I mean, especially if you're off the game for a while, and now you got to go back in. Yeah, you're gonna fumble it all the fuck up because you don't have the rhythm and the flow of the cadence. Real conversation. Yep.
Absolutely.
You know, and I think, you know, if a surefire way to know if you're selling well is if you can look yourself in the mirror and actually like the motherfucker looking back at you. Right. And it's a huge tell because the mirror is not going to fucking lie to you. Right. Yeah. So if you are actually loving the process and you're helping people and you're legitimately selling in a ethical way,
not like a grease ball,
right. then you will be able to look yourself in the mirror and say, you know what? I'm fucking proud of you. Right. I really like it. And most salespeople that do that transactional style, let's win at all cost things, I promise you, you put a mirror in front of them, they're going to turn away.
Yeah. They're not,
because they don't like who the hell they are.
100%.
Right.
Yeah. When I was my biggest, or our company was our biggest in terms of headcount, it was very transactional, and we had a product that could sell itself. We had the first whole home DVR on the market with Uverse. And we had the fastest internet, so it was really transactional. It was easy, and I had a lot of people in the company that, were a cancer because all it was transactional. They didn't care, and I would get fraud and stuff like that, and I would have to smoke it out. Now I've got 25 people, and they all align with our core values. And I know if their integrity is called into question, that I'm going to back them up first and then ask questions later. You know what I'm saying? Because I know that they align with our core value. We hired them for that. And, most of them have history with the company that I know they're going to do the right thing when it counts. And they can all look in the mirror and say, hey, I'm proud of you. That's huge. That's huge. That's a huge mindset piece.
Absolutely. Nothing more dangerous in a sales group than having a lone wolf, the one that's like, hey, you do your way, I'm going to do mine, I'll just take care of it, I'll get it done, because that motherfucker's going to scam somebody down the road, and then your ass is going to pay for it. So culture is such a huge thing to hire for, man. If they don't fit into your vibe, then you're just going to get burned, and they'll tear everything apart. So when we used to hire salespeople, man, for companies, and I would go and be part of the interview process, my interviews, I'd take them straight to the field. I'm like, let's go sell, because I wanted to see how they handled themselves on the sales calls. And, I don't care what role they were in sales, from vice president of sales down to a new guy just starting out. We went straight to the field because, people show their true colors when they're actually thrown in the ring. And, Mike Tyson's always said it best, man. Everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the face. It's the same thing in sales. You want to see what somebody's made of, put them in the ring, put them in a sales call. Because the people that like themselves enough, it's the after the call conversation that matters the most, because they'll be like, well, I fucked that up, but I'm ready to go again. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Where the people that don't like themselves, that don't have that internal drive and passion and everything else, they're going to be like, oh my God, that was the worst ever. I can't believe how bad I did. And they're going to really just fucking demoralize themselves. Where your champions, your people that are going to get after it, they're going to be like, well, that sucks. What's next?
Yeah.
Right. And they're going to be ready to go to round two, because this one doesn't matter. It's a really cool way to understand what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah. And that's huge. And training day early on is incredibly important. I get the offboarding forms whenever, we bring somebody on and they get offboarded, and a lot of them get offboarded 2 hours after they get onboarded because they go out to the field so fast. That's the first thing that we do. It's like, this is what it is, especially on our solar division, and it's summertime now, it's going to be 90 plus every day, 100 some days, they're going to find out real quick what they're made of, if they really want this.
I just happened to see a Jocko Willink interview, and he's talking to another Navy SEAL. And during that conversation, he's like, it always blew my mind that people would show up to Coronado. They knew it was going to be hard. They told all their friends that they were going to crush it. They told them that they were prepared mentally. He goes, there was nothing you could tell somebody to dissuade some of these guys coming out there. He goes, and I promise you, day one is always the biggest number of dropouts, right? Because nothing mentally prepares you for 46-degree fucking ocean, sand, and misery. And it's the same thing in your line of business. When people actually have to get out there and put the work in, you really find out what you're fucking made of.
Yeah.
And it's, overcoming fears and going through those hard times have nothing to do with being able to do it. It's literally who you become going through it. There's a fascinating science right now on dopamine that I'm really enjoying. And what they found is dopamine itself doesn't trigger when you actually complete the goal. it triggers on the way to completing the goal. And so what they find is this is the reason a lot of people set these monster goals that when they get there, they're miserable because there's nothing on the back end of it idea. And what they
Yeah.
found is the people that have found the most joy and happiness in things in life are the ones that actually embrace the micro wins and enjoy the process. So the idea would be like, if you put it in the solar world for you guys, it would be, okay, I drove to the house. That's a win. I opened the fucking door. That's a win. I knocked on the door. That's a win. They answered. That's a win. And you celebrate those micro things along the way versus putting everything on, you won the deal. And when you learn to love that step-by-step process of getting into it, the deals will get bigger and better because you're not tied to that outcome so much. And the science behind this is pretty freaking awesome. And I'm really enjoying to dive into it, how they're doing it with all these cool studies and things on it. But it's embrace those fucking micro wins and quit trying to freaking hit the home run every damn time. And it gets a lot simpler.
No, I agree with you 100%. I need to do a lot more research on the science of the brain and how it works, because I have been getting a lot of feedback from different guests, friends in my network and stuff like that. And they've been talking about this, the different studies that have been done. And the dopamine hits along the way is huge. One of the things that we're doing is, we're big on gratitude, right? And so every morning we post in our sales flow chat, which has all of our divisions in it. Everybody posts their sales in there. When they get a sale, we get a sale. You know what I mean? It's that whole deal. But also in the mornings, and we have 25 people right now. We had 23 posts this morning, what they were grateful for this morning. And it's simple stuff. I'm grateful that God gave me another day. I'm grateful that my kid's doctor found this thing out. You know what I mean? I'm grateful to see, my kid perform in a play yesterday, grateful for a comfortable bed to sleep in at night, air conditioning, like these very simple things. And, it may be a micro dose of dopamine every time you do that, but I mean, it just starts your day out the right way. And a lot of times they're opening up their phones and they're posting that in the sales flow chat versus opening up their phones, getting on Facebook, seeing the news that we have right now, unfortunately,
Right. Something that I love about gratitude, and I wish I could give props to who told me this. I don't remember who it was, but they explained gratitude to me in a way that I hadn't understood it. Right. Because everybody explains gratitude, that you need to be grateful for things, say I'm grateful and those type of things, but they explain it a little bit different way. True gratitude is respecting what you have. And the thought process is, if you look at your house and your house is fucking trashed, and you can say you're grateful for it all day long, but you're not truly grateful because you don't respect it enough to clean the fucking thing. If your car's a fucking hot mess, it's the same idea. You can say I'm grateful for my car all day long, but if you're not respecting it enough to take care of it, you're not truly grateful for it. So it's a really cool way to flip it just a little bit, to show gratitude by respecting whatever it is you're grateful for. And that was just a fascinating way for me to wrap my head around it, because there was aspects of my life that I thought I was grateful for, but then when I actually dove into it, I'm like, fuck, I don't respect that thing at all.
Yeah.
I got to change the script on that. Right. And so it's man, that's what I love about this game and time we're in now, is it's all about evolving yourself and making our own personal evolutions, man. And you get a chance to try new things and test new things out. And it's just cool to constantly level up by looking at things a different way and different perspectives, and being okay if shit breaks. One of the things we have in our company is we have we call the champions codes, which are not core values. These are life laws that you live by in our company. And one of them is go break shit, learning new things. And, we have this in there because complacency kills companies. And, I heard Gary Vee one point say, if you're not trying to put yourself out of business, somebody else will. And I thought that was a fucking powerful damn statement. And so I immediately started looking at the company. I'm like, okay, where are we complacent? And so we put this code in there. And what we find all the time is people are coming back and they're like, hey, look at this thing I created. I'm like, that's fucking awesome. What'd you learn? You know, and even if we don't use whatever they created, we don't, you know, implement
Right.
whatever they came up with. I love the fact that they're thinking beyond their current place to go
Mhm.
try and innovate and do. And it's been the coolest thing to help us with a lot of our growth because especially with technology and things, you know, these guys are geeking out on different tech pieces and stuff.
Yeah.
They're constantly coming to the table. And every once in a while they'll come to me with their head down. They're like, well, I tried this. This shit broke. I'm dude, that's fucking awesome. What'd you
Mhm.
learn? Well, next time we won't do this. I'm like, cool, go do that. That's fucking awesome. You
That's
know,
amazing.
yeah, it's a really cool way to run the business.
You know, like when we think about humanity or our nation as a whole, a lot of times people have a very negative mindset when it comes to that. And I have this theory, you know, and you just solidified it a little bit too. There's a lot of us out there doing exactly what you're talking about.
Yep.
We're establishing core values, we're establishing code, we're trying to break stuff and figure it out. And we're also looking internally at ourselves and working on those pieces, whether it be our physical bodies or our minds. And it's all in order to create one, a better life that we can be present in,
Yep.
and two, a legacy for our future generations. Right. My name Mitchell means a lot to me. It's because of the value I've put behind it, not the
Right.
not the value that my parents put behind it. And you know, unfortunately, I'm going to be the beginning of that generational legacy, right? And so I believe this, you know, however many entrepreneurs there are in the world right now that are on this journey that we're on, I feel like we are going to create a movement that ends up changing the world.
Agreed.
You know,
Agreed.
and it's hard to have that positive mindset with everything going on right now, but you create enough legacy builders, it will impact the world, you know.
For sure. And there is a lot of tragedies and things happening, but here's the thing: at the end of the day, a cup of coffee solves a lot of fucking problems.
Mm-hmm.
If you can take most people, sit them down at a table over a cup of coffee, and let them really get to know each other,
Mm-hmm.
it fixes almost every fucking thing because, you know, we're not that bad off. Really, truthfully, at the end of the day, there's some shitty things happen. Shitty things happen in life, but as a
Mm-hmm.
whole, we're pretty fucking good, and we're mainly good fucking people.
Yeah.
And a cup of coffee will solve a lot of damn problems. And but I agree with you so wholehearted on the entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
Building a business was the ideal thing for me that allowed me to meet me because you know I almost lost my farm. We almost lost fucking everything trying to build this. I mean, Christ, at one point my wife had to cash in her 401k because my mortgage was 3 months behind. Our Jeep got repoed. You
Yeah.
know, life sucked. And you know, when you get to a place in your life where there's no excuses left,
Mm-hmm.
there's nobody left to blame but you, then you start living. And I tell you, the first time I really tried to look at myself in the mirror, fuck, that was a tough day because I did not like the motherfucker looking back at me.
Yeah.
And I had to get to work on that. And I think the more and more people are doing that, they're learning, they're embracing, they're working on themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And this generation of creation of building their own companies. And dude, I fucking love these kids coming up behind us.
Yeah.
Dude, all these kids, they're going and you know building their own businesses and doing their own
Dude,
things.
they're waxing us.
Oh,
I mean, it's awesome. Like,
insane. Yeah,
I'm like,
totally.
how old are you? You're
Right.
25?
I talked to this kid the other day, 28 years old. He had just come back from VCon. And, you know, he's already built 3 multi-million-dollar companies. He sold 2 of them. One of them failed miserably.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's like, dude, I'm just testing theories. I'm like, what does that mean? He goes, I just want to see if I can get 10,000 people to do this thing with me. I'm like, and, you know, at 28 years old, I never thought like that, you know?
At 28 years old, I was still incredibly transactional in my lifestyle.
You and me both. You and me both. So it's pretty cool, man. I love the overall evolution of everything that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I think as a society as a whole, we're good. We really are.
Yeah.
The more people will get to know people, quit hiding behind their fucking keyboards,
Mm-hmm.
then life gets really good.
No, it's very true what you said about the cup of coffee, because all of a sudden all the bullshit leaves them.
Yep.
You know, when you're in front of them.
Yep.
You know, when they're online or on social media, it's they're using other people's arguments to make
Yes.
an argument And it's a whole mess when you just have that conversation. It gets rid of a lot of those walls.
And communication 101. As soon as somebody feels offended, as soon as they feel offended, all logic goes out the window. So people will say the stupidest things they don't even mean because they feel like their feelings got hurt because it was a personal attack. And that's why I say, put a cup of coffee down there. When you're face to face with somebody, you'll have a real genuine conversation and a good conversation. And you'll usually listen to both sides of the fucking story. Right. And it fixes a lot of cool things.
Yeah, no, I love that. And since you are in the Fort Worth area, we got to have a cup of coffee sometime for sure.
Come on, man. Come on.
I come up to Dallas all the time. I didn't realize you were that close. So
well,
that's awesome.
Dallas is in Fort Worth now. Let's not confuse the two, right?
I'm just saying I'm within an hour of
right.
a lot of times. No, this has been amazing. My favorite things about the conversation is that we not only got into, some things that can really help build sales teams. A lot of the philosophical stuff behind it on the front end, building out that business development piece, and then getting the results from that versus, trying to be this amazing closer or have a business of amazing closers that can turn into cancers a lot of times. But then we got into just some general mindset stuff too, which I think a lot of a few aha moments for me is that I'm going to go execute on it after this conversation. So I appreciate you for that.
Absolutely. And guys, if you're listening to this, do me a favor, man. This has been a hell of a show. Very rarely do I get to get into the philosophical things and that on a podcast. Do Doug a favor. And being a fellow podcast host, I can tell you the biggest bitch in the world is growing your audience. If you got any value, one tip, one trick, anything out of this, share this out with one person, just one person. Tell one person to come dial in and listen to the show. It's literally like you walk up and gave Doug a virtual hug, man. It means everything. Absolutely. To open the door. So just tell one person about this show and it'll mean everything to them.
I love that virtual hug. I didn't used to be a big hugger, but I am now. Over the past year, my network has forced me to become a hugger, and it's amazing. So I love that analogy that you used there. Guys, do me a favor. And if you like what Donnie's putting down, which I can tell you right now, I love it. Text success to 817-709-3886.
Nope. So sorry, it's 81. Yeah. So text success to 817-318-6030. Sorry, I must have typed it in wrong on your end. But yeah, and we'll send you a whole bunch of free stuff. And there's no sales anything. There's no sales funnel, any of that crap. But there's some books and things in there. But yeah, text the word success to 817-318-6030. And we'll send you a whole bunch of cool things. That's the best way to get connected to me on all the social platforms and stuff.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, Donnie, I appreciate you coming on the show and for encouraging everybody to give me a virtual hug. That's huge. I normally don't ask for that, and I should more often. So thank you for that.
You're very welcome, brother. Been my honor. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of Building Great Sales Teams. We sure do appreciate it. If you haven't done so already, make sure you're subscribed to the show wherever you consume podcasts. This way you'll get notifications as new episodes become available. Remember, great sales teams are not recruited. They are built block by block. Until next time.